know that Radio Free Mormon did a podcast about this the other day, really, really good. And we had been talking about that. And he himself was sort of like, I'm not sure about that. Dug in a little farther, and exactly what you said. Yes, in Pennsylvania, the laws do support this kind of action against the state president. And that's the problem. Every state has a different law. I believe that's why the leaders are encouraged and told to call the hotline. Unfortunately, and I'm talking about the church hotline that will tell them perhaps what their responsibilities are, whether they must report. Again, that seems crazy to me. Just report. I've podcasted a lot about that. In this case, the fact that the church is saying we will vigorously defend him, I believe, and others believe, that there may be some liability on their side as far as giving him advice that was not correct. Someone from another state advising, how you handle something legally across state lines. We may see something like that coming out of this. I think that's why they're going to so actively defend this. And I look at this almost like a test case. I'm sure there are other scenarios where church leaders were perhaps told incorrect information as far as reporting, or just on their own didn't do it quite right. It's very convoluted state to state, unless you just take the idea of saying, I'm just going to report it. What makes sense? Someone's being harmed, I will report. That doesn't seem to be the case here. So I think everyone's watching this. As you saw in the news story, it looks like he's been put on leave from his position. I mean, this is big. It really brings up the issue of liability of any church member in their calling. There are a lot of liabilities that leaders may not think about. And I think that is what is having a spotlight shown on it right now. I think we're going to see a lot more about this issue.
Yeah, Jana, from my reading of the article, it seems like Pennsylvania does have a priest penitent privilege law. It does have clergy privilege, meaning that if a bishop or a priest receives information about child sexual abuse that happens during a confessional setting, then that information can be privileged. But as we know, most times when stake presidents hear about child sex abuse, it is not in a confessional setting. They typically get that from a bishop who tells them about the incident. But that is not protected under Pennsylvania law. You have an obligation. You're a mandatory reporter in Pennsylvania for that information because it was not gleaned during the confessional setting in a one-on-one with the perpetrator. Hence, that's the reason that he was charged.
I want to say I'm not an expert on how the clergy penitent privilege law plays out in Pennsylvania. That is interpreted differently in different places. And so I can't say definitively whether that was privileged information or not. But one thing that I think we need to consider in this particular case is the geographical context in which it's taking place. Pennsylvania, along with Boston, was an epicenter in the Catholic sex abuse crisis and cover-up. And they are still untangling in Pennsylvania courts all of the ramifications of decades, essentially, of cover-up by the Catholic Church. They are going to have no patience whatsoever for any LDS attempts to do the same thing